me ask you this. You got Josh Dubow, AP digging deep, finding these stats. They're not great.
Yeah, hold on. Yeah, but where is this coming from? Like, what's his axe to grind?
Just saying, like, he usually focuses his attention on Derek Carr and the Raiders, but for whatever reason, he's got time in his day and he's finding these crazy stats about Kyle Shanahan. Yeah. And it's like, you hear about the hot seat and you think it's like, well, that's like, the organization's displeasure with their guy. But in certain ways, the hot seat could just be, life, the heat of the fans and the media and just people paying attention. Do you feel like the heat is starting to turn up on Kyle Shanahan in year 8? And it could be external, it could be internal, however you want to define where the heat comes from.
Yeah, I don't know that he's internally on any sort of hot seat, but I will say this. The conversation and the narrative around Kyle nationally is starting to turn.
I agree.
A lot of people are starting to question him, people that would have never questioned him in the past. And there's still a lot of people that are like, oh no, Kyle's great. It's Purdy. It's whatever. They're losing because of that. But there are people that are like, no, Brock Purdy's actually pretty good. In fact, a lot of people think he's elite. And so what does that mean for Kyle? Why are we doing this yet again? I think the national narrative is starting to change a little bit. People are at least willing to engage in the conversation that it might be Kyle Shanahan. And that has not been the case nationally whatsoever up until this season, in my opinion.
I mean, the league loves his scheme. I'm sure from the York's perspective, it's cool to have the sort of like the godfather of this generation's most popular scheme. But I think they've also shown that people can learn his scheme. He can teach it to people. They can take it to other places and do just as well, if not better, with inferior talent. And that there are things disconnected from his scheme in terms of game management, clock management that, have been an issue with him for a long time.
Yeah. Yeah, they have been. And, there is something to coaches, owners, whatever. Everybody can say that they don't listen to outside noise, but it's BS. I mean, it's simply BS. And it's very different to be Jed York and being able to flip on a sports show, a YouTube channel, whatever, and hear nothing bad about your head coach year after year after year. And then all of a sudden you flip it on and you're like, whoa, they're talking bad about Kyle? Should I be questioning things? So, yeah, I mean, I think that's how
Nick
things
Wright,
start.
It's Emmanuel Acho. It's,
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's Nick Wright is actually defends him because he's
true.
he's like not giving Purdy anything. So he's going to defend Kyle and be like, hey, Kyle's great. It's Purdy, But yeah, I mean, nationally, you are starting to hear those whispers. So, again, I don't think internally there's anything now, but this is kind of how things can start. If they don't win again and Purdy is amazing the rest of the year, where do you go with that?
Yeah, because again, like Kyle could always say he's the anti-Andy Reid. Andy Reid I asked Kyle today, like, what's Andy's system? Well, he builds around his quarterback. Kyle doesn't. Kyle can always be like, look how good of an offense I had in spite of my quarterback. I mean, it was Jimmy Garoppolo, and people always bought into that. Like, just wait. Yep. Just wait till he gets his guy. He has his guy. Everyone loves Brock Purdy. No one says he's Jimmy Garoppolo 2.0, and you're 3-3. You can't blame Brock for that. I mean, even if privately Kyle feels it's not his fault and it's on the quarterback, like no one else is going to say that. So now the heat's on you, and in a way that it's never been on you before. And that's sort of what that comes with the territory of being a head coach with an elite quarterback. You got to produce, dude.
Grant, I've been saying this for a year, and maybe you'll start to see it, or maybe you are starting to see it. But I always said that if it comes down to Brock or Kyle, the fans will choose Brock. They just will. Yeah, they will. And this is the first time that that is the case, because the fans certainly wouldn't have chosen Trey. They wouldn't have chosen Jimmy. They will choose Brock in this scenario. So if it comes down to it and Kyle starts throwing him under the bus and doing the things that Kyle's done in the past, it won't go well for him.
Yeah, and let's envision a future this may not happen, where the team falls short this year of expectations and they lose in the first round of the playoffs or the second. let's say they lose to Detroit at home in the playoffs, and their offense doesn't play so well. Fans are upset, angry, and Detroit goes on to win the Super Bowl. You don't think fans would want Ben Johnson over Kyle Shanahan? Like, it's that kind of a reactionary league. Like, well, that guy won the Super Bowl. He beat you. And it's a year-to-year thing. I mean, I think his standing and his job security is very much contingent on what happens this year. And we assume they're going to go far, but all we know is that they're 3-3. That's all we know.
Yeah, absolutely. And quite frankly, they haven't beaten anybody yet. I mean, what's the good win on their schedule at this point? There isn't one.
Doesn't exist. The Seahawks.
I mean, the fourth best win on the Chiefs schedule right now is probably better than the Seahawks. Like, you know what I mean? So I don't know. Here's the thing is if they beat the Chiefs, and again, they're going to be in this game, they're going to ride this through the rest of the season and turn things around. Now, I still think they're behind the 8 ball as far as getting the number 1 seed. And so it's going to make it tougher, but I think that it's going to be looking up from here. But if they lose this game, and there's certainly a possibility that happens, things are going to get interesting for the rest of the season. It's going to be, it could be up and down for a while.
And one more thing with that Seahawks game, like the Niners win by 12 and it looks like a blowout, man. The score of that game was 23-17 Niners. And the Seahawks had the ball with 7:56 left. And then Geno freaking Smith throws the interception to Renardo Green because Geno sucks and DK Metcalf was freelancing. I mean, the two of them figure it out. But you know what? That's something the Chiefs aren't going to do. If they're down 6 with 7:56 left, they're going to win. They're going to win because the Niners were like, here, go ahead, take it. Seattle, they're like, no, you take it. We are just that generous.
Yeah, I think that's the hard part is the 49ers are playing this dangerous game where they keep giving teams opportunities. Now, the Patriots, they gave an opportunity and the Patriots couldn't capitalize because they couldn't score points, but they gave them the opportunity. They gave the opportunity to the Rams. They did capitalize. They gave the opportunity to the Cardinals. They did capitalize. They gave the opportunity to Seattle. Again, they couldn't capitalize, but that is 4 straight games where they had a lead and gave an opportunity for the other team to seize control of the game. Some were able to,
that's
some were not.
the hallmark of a dysfunctional team. Sorry.
Yeah.
And I feel like this team might be dysfunctional. They just won a game. Winning's the best deodorant. They're 3-3. No one's complaining this week. Well, let's wait and see if they lose this Sunday. What the stuff last time they lost to the Cardinals, you had multiple players being like, something's weird. I don't want to say what it is, but I know what it is, and it's weird, but I don't want to say it. Like, that doesn't sound good. And then you beat the Seahawks and everything's great, right? Yeah, for sure. 3-3, first place in your division. Let's see how cohesive this team is if they lose another game. I want to know.
I don't. I would prefer that they just win. So
that's fair enough.